Welcome back to the Long and Thick podcast, where we help you navigate the noise and cut through the bullshit in the health and wellness space. Ronnie, good morning, my friend.
Nice to be with you again.
Likewise. We are on episode 3.
Just like that. Feeling good?
Feeling fantastic.
Love it. Tell me about a day in the life. What does it look like for you?
Day in the life for me, it covers 2 lanes. The majority of my time is spent in gym, personal training clients, with a balance outside of the gym with online or virtual coaching, which is a bit more comprehensive in terms of lifestyle alteration that includes a health and fitness component, whereas pretty much everything in gym, while we might touch lightly on those aspects, is just for the sake of fitness and lifting and cultivating strength.
Sure. And that's professionally, but then you also have yourself as a human being, right?
Sure.
Navigating your own training, trying to fit that in.
What's that like?
Sheesh kebab. Yeah, that's a thing of its own. And then just like normal life balance, right? Like going to shows or going to see new movies or whatever.
Balance, I will say, leans heavily on the professional. Or in a new year, new us kind of thing. But at time of recording, it says 2025 January. But yeah, no, I really do love what I do. I also border on workaholic anyway. So taking on as much as I can actually do without burning out is fine by me. And I really do enjoy helping people along or intervening where they need it, to ensure that they get the results they want, both for their performance and their health overall. So my own personal wiles definitely take a backseat to that. I'll probably still train maybe 3-4 days a week if I'm lucky, and it's cherry picked amongst gaps around client work. But yeah, it's not a bad balance, and social stuff left for the weekends. You and I, we enjoy our coffee dates, exploring around the city, even preparing for future episodes, things like that, which has been a really cool new engagement. So, but yeah, what about you? What's a day in the life in Ronnie Grant?
It varies quite a bit. My schedule for the week gets booked out through the chiropractic office, and so usually I'll like look ahead, see what's the like flow of each day. Chiropractic offices typically have sort of bizarre hours. I feel like it's like a rite of passage. Like we're closed from 1 to 3 every day, and that's really common. And so
siesta.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I'm very, very grateful for the schedule I have. But it really varies. Like I can have a lot of therapy-based appointments, which can look like more traditional rehab and exercises for people that are post-op or, navigating something. Or I have personal training clients in our new gym, or I have like more traditional body work kind of stuff, or people that are looking for tweaking performance things. So it really varies a lot, which I've learned to love, because it takes away any kind of like monotony and things like that. And
you also have a coaching component as well, do you not?
I do. Yeah. I do some remote coaching for people, that are not, available to train through the office. And so, those are people in New York or that have moved away, and still want to maintain some degree of, guidance and things like that. So I've worked with a really awesome coach, outside of you managing a lot of my strength stuff, who really taught me a lot about the conditioning side of things and programming that. And so I've been playing and experimenting with that. His name is Rory Sutherland. Awesome guy. And so, yeah, I do that as well. So it feels like a 55 hats that I'm like, they're like, skipping around town through what am I right now?
Hey, you dance through the streets quite well, though, so it works.
The graceful giraffe. But yeah, it's a beautiful thing to be able to be trusted and, try to balance those things out and hopefully do it well. And then trying to, like you said, navigate, sprinkling in our own training. It really gets tough, but I think the cool thing is that each person has such a unique schedule and life circumstances and jobs and relationships and all the types of things but you can always find a way to like make it work, right? Like at the end of the day, if you want the thing bad enough, if you can sit and scroll for, 45 minutes, even cumulatively throughout the day, you could have used 8 of those doing some shit. And, like there is always going to be a way to get that type of work in. And so hopefully people feel empowered, or like they can resonate with like, oh shit, yeah, that's a wild schedule. Like how many people are you seeing in a week? Like
session wise is between 30 and 37
in-person people.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you're still doing these other things, managing how many programs that are remote?
Right now, I think my client loads 10 or 11 remote.
Okay. But there's still like time slots for like honing in and making sure things are dialed, checking communication, right? Like it's time. Sure. It's not chill.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing too, is staying focused on the crafts. And to your point, it is very easy to just want to check out or just decompress. Or, I mean, we are algorithmically conditioned to just sit there and consume on our phones. And sometimes it's hard to pluck yourself out of the daze and confusion of just sitting there looking at your phone. But yeah, no, it is. I'm sure you'll agree that a lot of what we do, especially in person, is open and shut. Like you start, you finish, and that concludes what you need.
Yeah.
But on the coaching side and preparing for next sessions, if it's a more involved case, you have to do your due diligence in the background. And especially for me, people enlist me and they pay me to be an accountability partner. So depending on the individual, some it's just like, okay, here's what we're going to do for this week or this month, off to the races.
Yep.
Other people just need a little bit more of a nudge, or like me in their ear constantly.
Yeah.
But
hey, should I do wide grip or this?
Yeah. Or just like, hey, with my coaching clients, I can pretty much see what they aren't doing always as like a big brother initiative, so to speak. It's like, I can see you and what you're not doing. So yeah, I can see their caloric intakes. I can see their overall low intensity cardio, their high intensity cardio, what they're doing in the gym, how things are scaling or not scaling to plan. So yeah, it does. It is a tug of war, because as a human being, you're just like, oh, well, I just want to relax, but there's only so many hours in a week. And it is a disciplinary step to make sure that those times that I could be doing nothing is better served for the people that enlist my services.
Yes. And then after those things are done, you can go and fuck off and do whatever you want.
Yeah, 100%. Hang out with the dogs and post videos of me walking with them, which is pretty much all my internet presence now.
I love it. I look forward to seeing those, the temperature.
Speaking of the balancing act of multiple client-based pursuits, it gets complicated, obviously.
It does.
But that is very much a first world problem and a blessing. So walk me through the start of how you began a client-based journey, what it looked like in the beginning, and then what was it like as you built it up to a point where you're like, holy shit, I have 55 hats. Because at first you didn't even wear one.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great question. Man, it is such a process and such an unfolding. I think the interest has always been there for me to like keep doing more and being more for people, having more solutions, trusting myself more, continuing to learn. I feel like I need to part this out. So like the like business side of the slow burn that is gaining trust from people, getting those like little whispers of like, hey, I had this session and it was phenomenal with this person. You gotta, if something happens, you need to go see this person. That's just such a slow burn, right? Like it's the same for you. If you see somebody, they're not going to be like, I had one workout with this guy and he's so great and amazing. They might, but like, that's probably 1 out of 50. Like you can't bank on that. Right. And so, but you can in 3 months and they look different, feel different. They're like, this guy changed my life. Like you gotta work with him. So that process, you have to sort of like honor each stage, I think. And so originally my book was, empty. Like I was working at the front desk, which was an incredible way to segue into even being available at the chiropractic office. And just like taking spots when people would like want something. And it was like more traditional type of like massage that I would put my own sort of spin on. And then slowly but surely, like I found my groove a little bit more and the people who want to gravitate towards that will gravitate towards that, right? Like they had this saying in massage school that was like, not everyone's going to like your peanut butter jelly. Like the way I make it might be like for 10 people, and that the 11th is like, this is the most rancid thing I've ever had. And that they come and then they go, and you know, but yeah, it's always just been like a progression and a snowballing and a, follow the passion without like getting so overboard and trying to become more things, for more solutions, you know, feeling inspired by, that and really the transition of being so opposite that for so long, which was like the bulk of my life, was not like this like healthy, glorious grind into like, I love learning about the body. Let me help everyone.
Yeah.
It was
you
like, I love
wholesale thrashing it and
drugs
hoping
and
to be off the planet as fast as you possibly can.
100%. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a wild and beautiful ride. But it's there's parts of that still sort of, you know, will surface, right? Like you think about your formative years, it can be a battle to suppress at times. What about for you? Like
similar circumstance, but I think it can be said for anyone that is starting on a client-based entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah.
To think, I mean, I'm sure there's a couple lottery cases out there where someone had just the right network and the right know-how, where they just boomed onto the scene in whatever pursuit they happen to be pursuing. And it was just gangbusters from the start. But for 99.9% of people, it's a war of attrition that you often lose because it's not fun to sit there, and you can't cherry pick anything. You have to take everything that comes across your table to start building validity and, you know, people that can back your work and co-sign what you're doing and start slowly moving around that word of mouth scenario, while also having to keep it top of mind and speak it to anyone who will listen. Like, hey, I'm doing this now. I'm really trying to pursue this, whether it be in person, on the internet, friends and family. It doesn't start fun. It just,
that's a really valuable thing to like take a moment and like recognize, is that you said it so well, like you really don't get to cherry pick. And people have this assumption in this space that like, I'm going to work with pro athletes. I fit into that scenario a little bit because of connections that I have. Like I got to work with the Titans literally like weeks after getting my license. That doesn't happen for people. Like that's not a thing you can plan on, to be honest. So you can try to aim for that, but I am so fortunate. Like the stars aligned and those things happened for me. That is not the norm.
Sure.
And even that happening wasn't like, I'm the celebrity guy. Like Derrick Henry comes and sees me only because I had this one moment with him at training camp. Like, no. But that is such a momentous thing to recognize and own and just like embrace.
Yeah, no, we didn't start out killing this game.
No, and there's still so much yet to come.
100%, and more to learn, and honing the craft and really being the best service person that you can be in this trade. But yeah, it still is a learning experience, and shifting, you know, the ratios of how much can I do in this avenue versus this avenue. I mean, as professionals, obviously we're trying to maximize our revenue. But also too, like, I think we both come from the same school of thought, where that is a probably distant fourth in terms of our philosophy and our priorities, because we really do want to provide the best service and the best, you know, sounding board for our clients. So yeah, it's been, for me, starting out very humbly, same thing, like almost being sheepish and like, hey, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to be a fitness coach, you know, and you say it and you're like, well, I don't even know if that sounds good on paper. You know, who's going to believe me? You have like that charlatan imposter syndrome thing,
man.
And, it's a grind, and you just fumble around. And for me, I just started with, you know, virtual coaching at a distance, Zoom call workouts, garage and apartment gym visits with people that would, you know, take me on and see what my direction and philosophy was about. And then I was very, very lucky, right time, right place scenario, with Gym 5 here in Nashville, that gave me an opportunity to start. And it still wasn't I wasn't blowing the doors off the place.
Sure.
In the very, very beginning.
Hey, everyone, have you heard?
Yeah.
Daniel Colombo's
I
training.
didn't have a line out the door for it, and no one knew me from Adam, you know?
Sure.
And it just was, it was a slow process to start. It did snowball quickly, which was, I consider myself very, very lucky. So yeah, now it's just been, now things are humming, and now it's just find the balance of how much can I take on without sacrificing the quality of my work, the quality of the person that I am with each of my clients, because that's incredibly integral to me. Like, I don't want to have off days. You know, it hurts my conscience and my psyche to even think about if I were to show up doing my job and someone's like, something up, like that. Like, things happen.
Of course.
We're human beings.
Of course.
But the professionalism and the higher quality of work is of the utmost importance to me.
Yeah.
So that's also finding a proper balance of how much can I take on ambitiously without ever lowering that overall service.
Yeah. Tell me and our listeners a little bit about like the variety of people that you see, and then the ones, there's a couple points to this, the ones you connect with the most naturally and sort of why that is, and the ones that you would not expect to have like been like, wow, you're that type of person. On paper, we would not be, we wouldn't jive if you knew my background and what I like outside of this, like, but yet, you know, there's a click.
Yeah. The compare and contrast thing of that is, for me, I generally attract, probably by word of mouth when people recommend me to someone else, is more like steadfast, stoic, not very exuberant people. Not to say that we're not happy or I'm not happy, but my emotional bandwidth is like on the narrower side. You know, if I am elated, I'm like, oh, this is great. If I'm like pissed, I'm like, this kind of sucks, you know, whatever. So I'm not like bouncing off the walls or punching holes in walls. It's not my thing.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of resolute, steadfast people, which is cool. But again, there are wild cards. There are people that have completely different walks of life. I mean, you and I both come from what we would consider probably counterculture backgrounds. You know, just anarchistic, skate, underground punk, hardcore roots, where the professionals of the world in America cannot relate to.
Yeah.
So I definitely have clients that couldn't be more starkly contrasted to that.
Yeah.
But we still find this way to connect because we are both getting a keyhole view to something that is diametrically opposed to everything that we know. So when I have someone telling me that they're going through hedge funds and doing like mergers and acquisitions and crazy real estate deals, for me being in a tour van for most of my life, doing that, I'm like, holy crap. Yeah. But then, even though it seems like I might be marginalized in that scenario, those people who sat there and just worked the numbers and worked the books for their whole life, they're like, wait, what's it like to just be all over the world and see something new every single day, or watch people literally beat the shit out of each other for a living?
Yeah.
So that is always a surprising thing, because you're like, well, we have nothing in common on paper. Like, but when you're forced to be, you know, several hours a week, so many more layers start to peel back and so many cool things unfold.
Yeah.
And again, I also have clients that are completely different in terms of emotional energy.
Sure.
Like crazy hyper, and it's like,
and you're like the stable, like, all right, let's do another set.
Yeah.
Are you done?
But again, it's never rattling or grating, and it's just the variety is a spice of life. And for me, I've always been a student of human nature. I mean, from way back when, I always found this connection with people, or people just sought me out, people that were already different from me. Just there's whatever that core resonance is that invites people to just come start sharing stuff at random.
Sure.
I mean, I was antisocial for the first third of my life. Didn't stop people from just being, yep, here's all these things.
You're like,
so
what?
Yeah. So yeah, that breeds a lot of interesting channels of communication with my clients on a day-to-day basis, because there's still, you know, pieces of that always manifest, where we'll just be working out, completely focused on the work, and then just this random sharing session starts happening. I'm like, whoa, okay, we're here now. But yeah, it's been super cool. What about you?
Yeah, I think I think one of the biggest things that creates that space of what you're describing is like there's something diffusing about being, I don't want to say harsh, but like counterculture. Once you realize that the person's not like a threat, right? We're not talking about like a biker gang behind you and you're like, I wonder if they're going to take my car. Like that's not the energy that's being put off. It's more of like a understanding the things in that space. And it's not like we're bringing that into our sessions or like, that's not like our core. It's just
looming over someone's like, have you ever stabbed anybody? Not that we have, but I mean,
well, like, making that
not on record.
Definitely not that. But, I find that the people that feel like they're the most different from me, right? Like no tattoos, don't have any interest in anything like that. And never had a piercing that wasn't their ear when they were 3 years old kind of thing, whatever. When I curse in a session, I swear to God, I can sense a like, oh, like I can just like drop my guard.
Sure.
If I'm like, is that pretty shitty? People are like, huh, yeah, like that sucks a little bit, but like, thanks for being here with me. Like,
thanks for being a real one.
Yes. There's something profound about that because there's so much fake bullshit all over the place. So it's like, I think when people get a taste of that, I think we both offer that in unique ways. It's like, oh, I don't really care about the rest of like the background and stuff like that. And it creates a space for connection. But yeah, no, I definitely on paper draw the people that are like, oh, you like motorcycles and jujitsu and tattoos and fighting and whatever. And then can still connect with high level, CEOs that are doing things that you're like, if you put those numbers in front of me, I think I would just throw up like
for sure. My brain would bleed out of my nose.
Page.
And my little peasant musician ass just can't fathom it.
Yeah. I think it's just like a beautiful thing to highlight like the differences between people and how you can still, find ways to connect. But that dysfunctional history is deeply in there. And I think it gives us more credibility when people are making those changes, right? Like, I mean, I used to rip fucking lung darts all day long, like on construction sites. Like I don't smoke cigarettes now, but I know what that feels like to stop.
Sure.
I know it feels like to still want one if I'm like drinking at a wedding, right? And like, whatever, those types of things. So having some ability to like actually truly resonate with somebody like that is one of those things you don't want to try to earn on your resume. Like, oh, I'm going to smoke for 6 weeks so I know what it feels like. Like, maybe don't. Like, you know what I mean? But because it had already happened, like you can share in that sort of like suffering, so to speak. But I think it's, I don't know. It's just one of those things that it is what it is, and it creates more room for connection ultimately if you allow it to.
Sure. And I think that is a good thing to point out too, because we're not glorifying that we had, subpar beginnings or dodgy pasts or anything like that.
Sure.
But never acknowledging it is just as bad.
Yeah. Arguably worse, right?
And as like professionals, I think it just bodes a little bit better in the care of some people's hearts and minds, in the sense that like, oh, they have got to this point. They are seemingly reasonably successful at what they do. People co-sign what they do and review favorably. However, we started as misfit fuck idiots,
Amen, like, brother. Yeah.
It's just, we were unhealthy. We had bad habits. We were in bad walks of life. And we were absolute shades of our current selves. Comparatively and exclusively, I ate atrociously. Hydration was never on my mind. Admittedly, sleep is still the bane of my existence.
Sure.
I know the science behind it.
Yep.
It's very much a do as I say, not as I do scenario with everyone that I coach. But yeah, that's always a plague in the background. And also starting as a unhealthy, small, neurotic little human that always creeps in day to day.
Yeah.
And you try to relate to the people that have similar undercurrents in their behavior, but also just be like, hey, listen, like, however we need to be able to shed those behaviors, because they're only holding you back.
Yep. It's not the full picture.
100%. And I think you'd probably echo that these things never truly go away. But when you have support systems, you just have to do your best to quiet them, not only for yourself, but find creative ways of quieting for the people that you work with, because that ultimately is going to lead them to the best path to success.
No, that's heavy stuff, because you're talking about deep, like, self-identifying factors, right?
Oh, reflection's tough, dude.
Yeah, it will cut you deep. Like you said the other day, like, are you down to like get into the shit with yourself? Like, that is where those true transition things start to, even just the seeds are sprinkled. And I think it's pretty, serendipitous. We didn't really plan timing wise with this, but like with the new year, the like new year, new me stuff starts to bloom in. And I think it's important to start to recognize some of the big failures, which people have done 1,000 times. We can talk about this in our own experience. Like, I didn't transition into like a health derived life that was focused on those things because of like January 1st one year. Yeah. That may have been part of the like kick in the ass,
the OG catalyst that you can't even pinpoint anymore.
Maybe, but it's always such a blend. And I think part of what you're talking about is like, unless you're going to do that stuff, like you're missing such a huge aspect of like truly making a lifestyle change versus just like, it's good to make habit changes, but like you want to do more than that. So I think that's something we should dive into, soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we know there's lots of different types of people that work with each of us.
Sure.
It's normal, right? There's nothing crazy about that. What are some of the main things that you feel like someone comes and sees you, they have X problem, and you're like, all right, we're going to fucking destroy this. Like, what are some of those things? And why? And like, give me some examples of like what that's looked like for you.
Sure. It usually comes into two specific buckets. Usually it's someone who is feeling markedly unhealthy, whether it be just feeling ragged, pain, associated, tired or overweight, and feeling the pressure both physically and societally behind that. Or it's people that have a good amount of time in the fitness game and are either confused, stalled, plateaued, and not understanding why things are not progressing in a fashion, especially commensurate with what the internet tells them is possible.
Sure.
So generally there are, those two lanes, obviously exceptions. There's, dark horse scenarios and everything. But those are the two primary categories. In the former, it's really just paring down people's understanding or confusion about what health and fitness and getting healthier and more fit actually entails. Because there are so many conflicting things all over the internet, keeps people confused, keeps people buying things that they don't need.
True.
So
I love buying things though.
I mean, yes. Yeah. Knickknacks, tchotchkes, and trinkets are, they're different. But yeah, so it's really helping people understand how they got there, what choices were made or not made to get them to that point, and then just having a solid path to get out of, the swamp of not feeling good about yourself or with yourself.
And it's the same thing for both camps pretty much, right? Like you're like, here's the road we're taking. For the person that's like already pulling 405 and whatever is pretty fit, but it's just like, I've been stuck here for 3 years.
Sure.
Your road's a little different. Maybe it's steeper or, more bumpy. Whereas the person that's like, I just quit smoking cigarettes, new year, and I've stopped and I need to make a change. And the doctor told me XYZ. Like, you're like, here's my hand. We're going to walk together down this, little easier path, but it's still it's more or less the same path. Yeah.
For sure. And on the coaching side, it's still just distilling down everything that they may have heard or preconceived notions and just getting down to what we can feasibly do in the immediate term that you'll stick with. again, that's on both the performance side and just the losing weight, getting healthier side.
Yeah.
It's just being available to them and speaking in a language that they will understand and relate to, of like, here's our first little baby steps. Like I said, take my hand. This is what we need. But if you can't repeat this over and over and over again, we can't get to the bigger picture over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And really do the harder work that will have the most lasting results. You really have to, crawl before you walk.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's anything that exists in our lives that there's an exception to that. I mean, your ability to synthesize a new skill or whatever, or a habit might vary from thing to thing, but that is there's just a universal truth and principle around that. It's basically like you've said before, it's progressively overloading. True, literally, for exercising and lifting in particular. But that, theory or science is really like the same thing with building cabinets, or, hey, you're doing this is a very different kind of cut. Like, so I don't know why we separate those things when it comes to like our fitness.
No, it's a great point, because that's quite literally how any bit of physical or mental adeptness comes about.
Yeah.
Because you have to just make things harder and harder and take on more complex information or stimulus to get the effect that you want.
Yeah.
But to your point, people just seem to throw that wildly out the window when it comes to their exercise and their fitness, and stay on this hamster wheel.
I wonder if there's I haven't really thought about this before, but I think there's a part of it that, like, because you're in your body all the time, right? There's not a moment that you're not. Like, you have a constant feedback loop. Whereas if you're like, hey, I'm going to learn German, no one would be like, I'm going to have it down by like Friday. Like, I'll talk to you on Friday. I'd be like, what? But if your ankle's all fucked up and you're like, oh, like, I want it to feel better, you come in and whatever. It's like, hey, can we get this cleared up by Friday? It's like, no, like, well, but there's this like huge disconnect, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, it is a really good point. And I think that's a really good call out, is that we almost like because we're constantly always in motion and always doing things with our body, it's just kind of assume that it's always just going to be good and do the things that we need. But what would you say is what's a simple use case for you, but also what are the clients that come from walks of life that maybe no one thinks about, that comes with rigors that you have to see regularly, that you're like, oh, like I'm now seeing a pattern that, these run of the mill professions, or these everyday things that support our society and our commerce, but you get to see patterns in these jobs that present you consistent problems on their behalf. What's that like? Yeah,
no, that's a great thing to consider. Like, I would say, I mean, I love tattoos, but I have some friends that tattoo, one that's very close to me, and he's taught me a lot about, being in that space and seeing firsthand friends that have neck fusions and carpal tunnel and wrist surgeries and like countless amounts of surgeries from the demands of work. Dentists are very similar with the positioning, dental assistants.
Kind of always just hunched over and just posturally distorted.
Of course. And to an extreme, right? Like, because everyone's like, oh, the desk, oh, like I sit and my shoulders. And it's like, yeah, of course. Like, you sat for 11 fucking hours. Like, do that doing anything else. You wouldn't. You'd start like doing stuff,
squirming
or
about,
move. And right. Like, it's just so not natural, but it is what it is. And the demand is the demand. And like, you got to pay your bills, and it is what it is. Those were probably the first two. To tattoo stuff, I was like, yeah, because I love working with tattoo artists as a collector. Dentists, I mean, mechanics, hairstylists, estheticians. Man, the gamut of what people do is so interesting, what the byproducts can be on the body. And a lot of it comes back down to educating, like, hey, you just spent 10-hour shift, like holding this thing like this, like a barista's, like, dude, that's not easy. Like that stuff adds up, but that's like repeated, stress on the system. What that's doing is making your body adapt. Whatever you do, your body is adapting to get better at doing it.
Sure.
So our brain is like, you like to sit? Cool. I'm going to get fucking good at this.
I'm dope as fuck at sitting.
Exactly. I'm going to make you almost like crave it.
Yeah.
So that when you're in that position, it gives you this like positive reinforcement loop. Like, hey, we're back at doing our thing. I like where I am in space.
Sure.
It feels safe. It feels familiar. I've done this a lot, right? Start brushing your teeth with your left hand. It feels like shit. Why? Because your brain's like, huh?
Yeah.
Like,
we didn't fucking put all our eggs in that basket.
yeah, there is no eggs. I don't even have a shell. There's nothing. There's not the chicken in sight. So yeah, it's interesting to help people make those connections within themselves of like, oh yeah, I have just been like adapting to this. And how can I add some new things that can like steer me away from being so adapted to the thing I need to be adapted to, right? But like, if it's a detriment to your health, like, yeah, you got to start rocking the boat, changing things up a little bit.
And unfortunately, most people, they don't give themselves the time, or maybe they don't think they have the time or the grace to sit there and get a more stratospheric look of their life and be like, oh, like,
or the money.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is like an interesting thing to, as someone who fairly recently started spending a lot more on like coaching and things that are like, oh, I need more. I mean, even thinking about buying CEs and things like that, like there needs to be a priority on like putting money aside and expense allotment for like your well-being.
Yes.
And it's said a million times, like start prioritizing your health, spend on your health until now while you have the option to, and it's a choice before you're forced to, and you're in a hospital bed and you're like 57 and your heart's like dissolving. Like maybe
what's the bigger expense? You taking on a couple classes or a personal trainer, massage therapist, a coach, what's that expense like getting ahead of the game as opposed to adding several zeros on the back end in the American healthcare system when shit goes really wrong because you were unfortunately asleep at the wheel or at least distracted with the rat race and the grind that is our professional culture.
Yeah. And it's tough to do. I mean, I know if I didn't work in like healthcare, I wouldn't prioritize my health.
No. Yeah. No, it's a constant reminder of what has worked and also a just immediate dashboard view of what's not working that you have to help people fix. How do you rationalize with the people that you work with? I mean, I'm sure there are several that are just, hey, I know what you do. I've heard the great things. Sign me up.
Sure.
But what we do is absolutely a premium expense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And especially in economic times that are getting worse for a lot of people. How do you broach that with potential clients?
I think the first key thing is making sure you feel confident in knowing what you're asking and being like, yeah, of course it costs this much because I'm worth that. But you have to make sure that you feel that way, like so sincerely, and that in your time with somebody, you provide that.
Sure.
Right? Because like, if I know someone is like, hey, I'm fucking strapped and like, I got this one session with you, like we need to do as much as possible. I'm like, okay, understood. I'm going to send you like 50 things. Take out your phone. We're going to take notes. Like, tell me what are we getting into? Like, and so I try to make sure that value is met in the way that they're expecting it to be met. And then maybe even some. I know I drop the ball. I know I don't do it perfectly every time. But that is my mission behind asking a high amount of money for time with me, is to make sure that it's like, yeah, that was worth it. I learned a lot, like, and I take it with me. And I'm very fortunate to be able to hear those things from people that are like, with that thing we went over 8 months ago, I've never forgotten it. Yeah. And I've implemented it into like every part of my day. I'm
super
like,
cool.
Wow, that is really crazy, but thank you. And I'm glad. And that's why we did this. So I think that's the most important thing. And then just understanding that like your actions are going to reinforce you know, your beliefs and vice versa. And like, they need to keep feeding each other. And so, like you said, as things get more expensive, like our costs need to rise too, just from like a fight inflation kind of standpoint. But we got to make sure that we keep providing even more and more excellent value. That it's just, it's almost like a no brainer. It's like, oh, that's how much you cost. Like, that's like maybe not even enough. You know what I mean?
Sure. No, it definitely have heard that feedback as well, but it's all relative to everyone's position and station in life.
That's true.
And what they deem as an acceptable fee for anything. And it really just as like just constant tier level stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas depending on what room you're in, and this is not saying that one is better than the other. It's just what you're exposed to and then what people's lifestyle allow them to afford by just reference of, oh, this is a lot of money. This is not a lot of money.
Yep.
So you tell the same person that we charge X a month for coaching, they're going to be like shell shocked. And like, wait, what? I can't fathom that. Like that's groceries for, you know?
Yeah.
But other people that are in a different standing, you know, are lucky enough to have a larger financial security blanket.
Yeah.
They're like, wait, that's it?
Yeah.
So it's trying to find, to your point, an intersection that makes the most sense for the most amount of people without one being like, dude, you're not charging enough. While other people are like, dude, this is astronomical. Are you out of your mind?
Yeah. And I think it's vital that we recognize like it is expensive. And it is relative to somebody's income and all those things. But we want to make sure that as a form of a provider for another person, that we meet as many as we can, right? And so one of the goals of even doing this is like, this is free. You probably have a phone and YouTube and Spotify and whatever things that we're playing this on. Like, and I hope that we can create a lot of free actual tangible value for people that are like, there's no way I could afford you. And I don't know that I ever could. And that's just like where I'm at. But you've explained XYZ thing and given me some examples of this thing that feels very, you know, absorbable and reasonable and made sense and resonated with me and all those types of things. And that's a big goal for me. And like, I would love to get feedback in 6 months that like, 10 people were like, hey, when you made that like program outline, like I've taken that and this is the results. Like, and they didn't spend a fucking dollar and they were lifting their backpack with books or like whatever, you make it work. Like, so, yeah, it's a interesting thing to ponder, but at the end of the day, whether you have the money to spend on your health or not, your health is your most valuable thing, right? Like your ankle hurts, your wrist hurts, like few things matter as much. You feel sick. What do you care about? I can't wait till I'm not sick.
Yes.
There's memes all over like, man, remember that time when I wasn't like sneezing and coughing and had a fever? Like that was dope. But we're so unappreciative until we're like faced with the, and so it's like, hey, don't wait. Don't like manage the symptoms before they grow, like get to the root of shit, like put the time and put the work in. So yeah, I think it's a must do. And especially around this time, like new year, right? Like this is like the hot spot of
all things lifestyle change, fitness. We're going to lose the weight. We're going to be good by summer.
When does it end for most people?
Oh, mid-February, early March.
Do you see a lot of cancellations roll through? Or is it just that people don't show up?
Yeah, I mean, a little bit of both. It's a lot of people that are immediately socially, culturally motivated by this tent pole time in, you know, a new year.
Which is powerful.
It is powerful. It's an awesome thing, but it does not set people up for success because it's a shiny coin, immediate gratification thing. And then people are unfortunately quickly reminded that that's not how health and fitness actually work.
Yeah.
And it's a long-term compounded invested process. That's not to condemn the new year, new me sensibility.
No.
But I think it'll be good for us to unpack a lot of the tropes and tendencies of those kinds of approaches.
Yeah.
And getting them to a place that is more sustainable.
Yeah.
So I think that's really something we're going to probably dive into here in the future, just because, again, I would never talk down to someone like, oh, I have New Year's resolutions. any start or any motivation to start is amazing.
Yeah.
So however it comes about, whether innate, unnatural, natural, it doesn't matter. Like you said, your health and your ability to feel good on the majority of the days, honestly, it's priceless.
True.
Which is why that's kind of the value proposition is, yes, are we premium expenses? Absolutely.
Sure.
But what would you actually pay if you never had to think about, oh, I feel like shit. This part of my body is completely just jacked up and I just wince throughout the day the whole time. Or I love the way I look, or I can fit in the clothes I never thought possible.
I have energy and I feel excited and motivated about things.
And not to sound like a bumper sticker, but the new year, new me is a perfect way to start it.
It is.
You just have to be able to finish it and continue doing it.
Yeah. No. So we'll definitely dive into that on the next episode. I think it's going to be pretty timely. And until then, we'll see.
Ronnie Grant, it's been a pleasure, my friend.
We'll see you fuckers on the next roll around the block.
On the flip side.